Hey everybody, and welcome to the channel. Let's go ahead and wrap up the month of September, starting with the books that I read. And I will say, overall, this was a pretty productive reading month. I got a decent amount of books finished this month, and some of that had to do with them being on the shorter side. There was no one really long book, no molassin this month or anything like that to slow me down. So I was able to get through a lot of stuff, and I'm pretty happy with that overall. And the first book I started with was probably my third most anticipated book of the year, and that was The Mercy of Gods by James S.A. Corey. This is obviously the author duo that wrote The Expanse, and I ended up giving this book a 4-star rating. And I think I'm on the more positive side of this book. I've really only seen one other person, Ben, over at Books from Vegas Con. He is super positive on this book. I think he absolutely loves it. I think he, was begging for book 2 already, and I'm not as positive as he is, but I'm definitely more positive than some of the other people I have seen. I know this has been a little bit of a struggle for some of my character-focused readers out there, and that's not normally a problem I have, especially in science fiction books, I've noticed. I don't care as much about the characters if the ideas that are explored in the book are on a level that I find really interesting. I've had the same thing happen where the idea is being explored, but it's not one I care about, and that has hurt my enjoyment of the book. Blind Sight from Peter Watts is kind of like the perfect example of that, where I didn't care about the characters, which can be fine for me in sci-fi, but then I didn't care about the idea that was being explored in that book. And fortunately for me, that was not the case here. The Mercy of the Gods, the idea that was being explored, is one that I found really fascinating. I very much love when you get to explore a new alien culture, see how they interact with humans, and just that idea of first contact, which is kind of the soul of this story, is probably my favorite sci-fi fantasy fantasy. My favorite sci-fi trope is first contact. So I think it was explored in a really interesting way and in a different way. I think this book makes you think it's going to be one thing and it really turns into another. And so I totally get why some people aren't as high on it. And I can totally see if those lows are really, really low for you, why it will drag down your enjoyment of the book. But luckily for me, I actually really liked it. And so very much looking forward to the second one. And I think there's maybe a novella coming out for this. I know they did that with The Expanse, where they would have a novel release and then they would have a novella and then a novel, and it looks like they might be keeping the same thing going here with this series. I think it's called the Captive War series is the name of, I think it's supposed to be a trilogy, so I think that might be the same pattern they're going to do as well. And then luckily enough for me, my second most anticipated book of the year came out here in September, and that is Not Till We Are Lost. This is book 5 in the newest Bobbyverse book here by Dennis E. Taylor, and I was super excited for this book. I absolutely love the Bobbyverse. Even though the second most recent book was my least favorite, I was super hyped still for this, and while this still hasn't reached the new heights I was hoping for from the series, I think this is a step up, but still below what I'm hoping for from the series in general. And I feel like I need to say this now. This is my book of the month. That's still how much I enjoyed this book, but I feel like there's so much more that this series can do. I feel like it's just a step away from greatness instead of just being in good. It's so close to taking that next step up, transcending to another level, and I very much want to see that from the series. Daniel Green actually did a really, really great series review for this, and I agree with pretty much everything he said in that entire video. I highly recommend, if you have any interest in watching it, you go watch that series review by Daniel, because he kind of hit the nail on the head there and said a lot of things that I have been feeling with Not Till We Are Lost. I enjoyed a lot of elements to it, but I said in my review for it that it really felt like the first book of a new arc. And while that's okay, I feel like it really just sets so much up for the next book. And if that book then doesn't deliver, this one probably looks even worse in hindsight. And I don't think I would worry about the series going forward. I think I would just have to accept that it's not going to reach that next height that I'm looking for. So much is set up. There's a lot of things that I'm interested in, and I hope we really get some big epic stuff coming here in the last, I guess I shouldn't even say in the last book, in the next book of the Bobbyverse. Who knows if it'll be the last one. After my 2 very highly anticipated books, I went into a read that I was very nervous about, and that is Impact Winter Season 3, and this book, if you can call it that, does have a weird title, and that's because each book is kind of like a season of TV. Each chapter is an episode title. It's episode 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. So it is very much built out kind of like a TV show. At the end of each chapter, there's kind of a hook to make you want to go into the next one. And in general, I gave this one a 3-star. I liked it. It was definitely better than the second one. The second one I had a lot of issues with. This is an audio production, right? This is an audio show. Think of the old radio shows they would do. That's basically what this is trying to be. So calling it an audiobook is honestly a little bit of a stretch, even for me, somebody who's super supportive of audio listening. But with all that being said, book 2 had this issue where there was a lot of bad audio stuff going on. And look, I don't have great audio in all of these videos. There are definitely noises and stuff that I make that I'm sure drive people crazy, audio levels changing and stuff, but I'm also not audible with like a whole studio, and I'm assuming some money behind me producing stuff like the second one of these books was. And so I was super nervous going into book 3. This was going to be like the make it or break it for me for the series. And while it didn't reach the heights of the first one is super good. Like if you're interested in something and you don't want to continue, like just read the first one because it's that good. It's awesome vampire stuff. That's the premise of this story. And luckily, season 3 fixed some of the problems I had in season 2, and I enjoyed it so much more. Like I know for some people a 3-star rating isn't good. For me, 3-star is a good rating. I liked it. I had a really good time with it, and I'm very much looking forward to season 4, as they're probably going to call it, because I don't see why they would change it now. Then after Impact Winter season 3, I took a chance on a book that I didn't think I would like. I saw another booktuber talking about it, and she just was raving about it, absolutely loved it. And the whole time she's talking about it, I'm like, I don't think this is a book for me. I don't think this is even a book I would like, but I wanted to try it anyway. She was just so passionate about it. And it just, I don't know, I just kind of wanted to like take a chance on something, because who knows, you know, maybe I would have liked it. And unfortunately, I didn't like it. Unfortunately, it's probably one of my least favorite things I've ever read. But that doesn't mean this was bad. I always want to clarify, like, when I'm doing my star ratings, that is based on my enjoyment, but that does not mean this was like a bad book, or I guess technically novella in any way. It is a very short story, but that is The Salt Grows Heavy. And yeah, sure, I may have only given it 2 stars, but I went into this knowing I probably wouldn't like it, but I was hoping, and I just kind of wanted to experience something different. And this is definitely different. This is a pretty weird book, and I kind of liked that aspect of it. But the general premise here is we follow a mermaid and a plague doctor, and they kind of have this romance going on, and they're kind of exploring the countryside together, or maybe not countryside is the best way to say it, but they go on a little adventure together, right? And there's some really weird stuff that goes on. There's some kind of dark and grotesque stuff that goes on. This is like a dark fairy tale kind of story, and like I'm not going to be the person to sell it to anybody, because I just don't think I can. But I will say I am very glad I took a chance and tried it. I think it's always good to sometimes get out of your comfort zone, try something that somebody has really sold to you, even if you don't think you're going to like it. And this is a perfect example of that. Like I said, this is super well done. The writing's pretty good. There are some repetitive things that happen in it that I don't know if maybe that was a purposeful choice or just the author just, you know, getting into writing. I don't know the story behind it. There are some things that I noticed that bothered me a little bit, but in general, I thought this was a pretty good time. I just didn't like it. I don't know how to like quantify this book. It's a really strange one, but overall, even though I didn't like it, I am still glad I read it. And I don't know, that's just a weird thing. This is one of those books that I feel like I'm going to think about for a lot longer than I should, and I don't know why. I think it's just one of those ones that's going to kind of live with me for a while, and I'll think about it. There's a couple books I have like that, and this might just be one of them now. And unfortunately, I followed a 2-star read up in The Salt Grows Heavy with another 2-star read, and that is The Book of Elsewhere by Keanu Reeves and China Miéville. And this is a really strange book also. Strange in a different way than The Salt Grows Heavy. There are moments of like brilliance in here, and it's like the parts of this book that I wanted to be explored were the elements and the things that weren't explored. This is a story that really takes place for most of it in like a series of rooms with people talking and some dialogue, and like I feel like there's a lot of interesting story. Like we're dealing with somebody who's been alive for 80,000 years. And we get like little bits and pieces here and there about lost civilizations and previous technology, that like all these things, and it's like, oh, let's go spend some time with that. And then instead we don't. And yeah, unfortunately, I will say it just doesn't deliver on the things that I would have wanted it to. I don't think the reception to this book in general has been overly positive. I'm sure there's some people out there who love it, but I saw a couple people who kind of felt the same way for me. I will also say the first hour of this audiobook, I hated. I mean, I legitimately it was some of the, like at that point, I was like, this is the worst, my least favorite thing I have ever read. I won't say worst, but like it was my least favorite thing I had ever read in my like entire reading experience. That first hour was that brutal for me. And I don't even have like a good reason why, it just was. I was just like dreading. I was dreading picking this back up to listen to. And then it definitely improved. Like it got to the point where there were definitely pieces of it that I was interested in, but overall, like it just wasn't there. It wasn't enough. I think maybe the comics could be interesting. I don't know exactly what the comics cover, but if they cover some of like the past stuff, I would go read the comics. I think, you know, there's definitely like interesting things here that could be explored, and unfortunately this book just didn't do that. And then the next thing up is The Gallant by Janny Wirtz. I actually haven't finished this yet. I actually plan on finishing this today after I finish recording this video. So I'm at like 75% of the way done with it. This is like I think it's like a 100-page novella or something like that. So I'm very close to the end. If I don't finish it tonight, I'll finish it before the month is over. Once again, as always, Jenny Wirtz writing, absolutely love it. Really nice to be back here in this world. This is a prequel novella to The Wars of Light and Shadow. It takes place, is it 500 years? I want to say 500 years before the start of that series, and it's just nice to be back. The world is so interesting, and just Jenny's writing, once again, like I already said it once, but I love it. I really do. I have a great time with it. I can just picture things when I read her writing in a way that isn't the case for every author. And so I've really enjoyed being back there and experiencing that. I don't know when I will get back to Wars of Light and Shadow. I'm in like a good spot because the last book I finished ended an arc. So I'm not sure when I want to start that next arc. Probably sooner. I'll probably start it before the end of the year, I think. I want to do the last Malazan, not the last Malazan book, the fourth Malazan book. I want to finish that before I start that because I think that fourth Malazan book is like a decent stopping point. So I want to be able to kind of like stop Malazan, read a little bit of Wars of Light and Shadow, go back to Malazan, and then kind of mix them back and forth. But The Gallant is good. I don't know what I'll give it. Normally novellas I only give a 3-star rating. That's just something I've come up with for myself. So a 3-star novella for me is about as high as it gets, so this will probably get that ranking. And then the last thing I started to read here in the month of September is The Forgetting Moon by Brian Lee Durfee, book 1 of the 5 Warrior Angels trilogy. And let me just say, I hate that I did not start this series sooner. This is one of those series that I have owned. I've owned it, not even just wanted to read it. I have owned this series for years at this point. And I always figured I would like it. And so I do this thing where I push books down the TBR that I know I'll like because I'll be going through a phase where I'm not reading a bunch of stuff I like. And I'm like, okay, let's go to the well. Let's go get something out that I know I'm going to like. And you know, I finally just on whim was like scrolling through books I owned on Audible, and I was like, The Forgetting Moon, why haven't I read that yet? And so I started it here in September, towards the end of the month, so I knew I wouldn't finish it this month. And I'm only, I don't know, 10% of the way into it maybe, and it is so good. I'm having such a good time with it, and we're still like just setting the stage. We don't even like know things yet. Like major things haven't even really happened yet. And I think the writing is amazing. The story just has kind of gripped me. I want to know what's going on. I want to know motivations. I just want to know, and I'm all in already, and I'm not very far into this book. So hopefully this doesn't come to bite me in the end. I don't think it will because I'm already just like enthralled with it. Like sitting here right now, I'm thinking about what just happened in the book, and I want to go back and keep going. I really want to be reading right now. So fortunately, that's a good thing for The Forgetting Moon. So hoping I can finish that here early in October and then start The Blackest Heart. I got to learn the names in order now, and hopefully I can start that towards the end of October. Also, speaking of October, somehow in my October TBR, I completely forgot to mention The Fury of the Gods comes out in October apparently. So that is definitely something that I'll be trying to pick up because I really like that series as well, by John Gwynne. So I actually already pre-ordered that one, so it's just going to show up in my audio library here, and yeah, so somehow I forgot to mention that, so slide that TBR note here into the wrap-up. And then just to finish up the novels, like I said, my book of the month is Not Till We Are Lost by Dennis E. Taylor. Once again, Bobby Verse is great. If you haven't read it, you should. I really recommend it. Those first 3 books are so good, and then books 4 and 5 are still really good. They're just want that next step. It just needs to level up. Let's go to Super Saiyan 2 instead of just staying at Super Saiyan. That's kind of how I feel about that series. And speaking of Super Saiyan, let's go ahead and here and talk about some of the manga I have been reading. And really, it has just been Dragon Ball. I am pretty deep into the Cell Saga here. And man, I have just really been enjoying getting back into Dragon Ball. It's one of those series that I grew up with. You know, I know what's going on. This is technically the first time I've read the manga, but I've watched the anime. And so, I don't know, I'm just having such a great time with it. The action flows so good. And one thing I think I've learned about myself recently is I think I enjoy different things in manga than I do in my novel reading. And maybe that's obvious to some other people, but for me, I figured the same kind of thing that I like in my novels is what I would like in my manga. And I think I just like something a little bit more simple, a little bit more straightforward, a little bit like, I don't want to say dumbed down because there's still a lot of depth into a lot of the manga I like, but I don't always just need this like overbearing, plot-driven, super deep narrative and everything. And I'm saying all of this while Berserk is probably my second favorite series at this point, but I don't know, it's kind of this idea I've been going back and forth on about like, what do I actually really like in my manga? And the more I think about it, the more I think it is different than what I like in my novels. I like my novels to just have something different than my manga, and I think that's a good thing for me to know so that maybe I don't continue to be so streaky on reading manga, because I'm really bad about like reading 50 chapters in 2 days and then not reading anything for like a month. And so I'd like to be a little bit more even again in my manga reading. And so I think understanding what I actually like in series is going to be helpful for that. I do just also want to mention, if you are an Attack on Titan fan, you absolutely need to go and watch Murphy Napier's video she is doing on Attack on Titan. As somebody who has read the series, I read the series as it was coming out. I was caught up for years. So going and watching somebody who's experiencing it for the first time has been so much fun. Watching all of her theories, it was like me back in 2014 when I was coming up with all kinds of crazy theories about what's going on, what are the Titans, all of these things. She's going through it and just like full spoilers in some of her vlogs. It's so much fun to like watch somebody theorize and like be like, that's so wrong or that's so right. Like, it's so much fun, and I have thoroughly enjoyed those videos. So if you're an Attack on Titan fan, you definitely should go check out her videos. And then let's go ahead and finish up with any other media, so like video games, TV, movies, all of that stuff. And I will say I finished up season 4 of The Boys finally. I am super late to finishing it. I have always really enjoyed The Boys and Invincible. I'll go ahead and mention here. I don't know if I talked about them in my last wrapped up, and if I did, it doesn't matter. But I finished that as well. To me, those are two series that kind of go hand in hand together, kind of similar concepts of anti-heroes and all that kind of stuff. But season 4 of The Boys, I thought it was pretty good. I know when that first dropped, a lot of people were a little bit more negative on it. I think a lot of people had it as their least favorite season, and it might be my least favorite season. But I don't know, they all kind of blend together for me at this point, and I had a really good time with it. I still thought it was really good. I can definitely see, like, it's very much hitting you over the head with, like, political things, and I don't think people are, like, going back and, like, being like, it was always like that, and I think it was always way more subtle than it was in season 4, which I can totally see why some people, like, they just want to sit down and not think about that kind of stuff. So I can see why maybe some people have a more negative view on it. Personally, for me, it didn't bother me all that much. I kind of thought a lot of it was funny and played into the show and, added an extra layer to the 4th season. I will say it was not ready for how that season ended. That was pretty wild. And I am very much looking forward to the 5th season, which I believe is going to be the last season, which I think is good. I think we don't want it to overstay its welcome too much. But the only other thing I have been watching is the NFL. I am a huge NFL fan. I am a Steelers fan. So I am living the good life right now. We are 3-0. Justin Fields has started to progress and looks better each and every week, which I'm really happy about. Our defense is on like a historic pace right now, which I'm sure won't stay, because defense in today's NFL just like, they can be great, but one game kind of ruins a lot of those like historical stats because they can just be like so wild. And also just in general, you're gonna have a couple games every year where like somebody drops like 30 on you, and it's gonna happen. Like, you can't always play not letting anybody score more than 10 points on you defense. I mean, that'd be great. I would love that. We'd probably, my joking 17-0 prediction to Mike at Mike's book reviews would probably be right if that's the case. But I've been happy with how the season started. Our season, the Steelers season, is really back heavy. We have like an 8 or 9 game stretch where it's like 8 or 6 division games, and like the Chiefs are mixed in there, and all kinds of, like, we have a brutal schedule at the end. So stacking these wins early in the season really set us up to be able to make the playoffs. And I don't know if we can make a run. I think Justin Fields would really have to kind of take a step up from where he has ever shown for us to be a legitimate playoff contender. But I mean, I can hope, right? I don't think Russell Wilson is going to get into the game unless Fields just completely falls apart or gets hurt at this point. I think Fields has kind of locked it up, and I don't know if Wilson was ever going to be like the true starter. I guess they said he was, and maybe his calf actually is hurt, but I don't know. For the longest time, it just kind of, to me, has felt like this has kind of been a smoke screen, and that they never, like, Russell was going to be an option, but Fields came in and just was significantly better than they thought he was going to be, or something like that. I don't know, but that's enough football, because I will keep going if I get started, because I don't know. I spend a lot of time talking about football, listening to football podcasts, all kinds of stuff. So we'll go ahead. And I do just want to mention one other thing before we wrap up the video. As always, I am very much happy to help any, indie authors. You don't even have to be an indie author. If you're a published author and you want me to talk about your books, I'm more than happy to always talk about them in my wrap-ups. I never promise that I'm going to read your book or anything like that, but I'm always more than happy to help promote it here at the end of the wrap-up. And all that being said, this person did not ask for that at all, but this is somebody whose channel I really enjoy, and I talk to him in the comments a lot, and we go back and forth in them, and I just, like I said, really enjoy his content. Really enjoy his videos. He seems like a super nice guy, and that is Bookish Chaz. If you guys don't know him, he's been around on BookTube, I think, for quite a while now, but he is finishing his next book, which is Nomad's Crucible. Did I get that right? Yes, Nomad's Crucible. I actually don't remember too much about it. He has a whole video on it. Definitely go check out his channel and his book, but I just wanted to mention it here, shout him out, because I think he said he's been working on this for like 8 years or something like that. So that's a super long time, and I'm just really happy that that book is going to be finished and is going to be out soon. So just wanted to mention that here at the end of the video before we go ahead and wrap up. But that was my month of September. I would love to know about yours down below. Let me know what you read, watched, all that fun stuff. Anything you want to let me know, hit me up in the comments. I love comments, and I will definitely get back to you. But that is all for me. And as always, have a good one.